Today is the 15th of the month of April, and we've come together on this day and thinking about the time that passes, the days and nights that are relentlessly passing are warning us to practice, to be our own masters. The time of a life that is chasing away can be compared to dogs that are being chased by wolves in the forest. They keep running and running, and one time... Oh, sorry, yeah, sorry. Yeah. Deer chased by wild dogs in the forest. And so this is a simile that the Buddha brought for the time of our life becoming relentlessly shorter and shorter. At one stage, the deer will just have to be caught by the wolves, by the wild dogs. We reflect about our lives going through different phases, like we've passed childhood, the time of teenage, and we come to the grown-up phase, and in the end we face the time when things are falling apart, the old age. And we're eventually going to face a state where we don't know anything anymore, where there's nothing that we are familiar to. This may bring up reflections about the emptiness of all the things that we are acquainted to. When we build up dana barami, the paramita of giving, the faculty of giving, the potential of giving, then we may train to get rid of our attachments to things of the material world. We train to get rid of our fetters. Luang quoted a saying of the Isan in Isan language, which I must admit was a bit fast, but he said it was about the attachment of mother to child and husband to wife, and the third one, like how they are interlinked and they never can let go of each other. So we experience dukkha because we fear separation from what we like and from what we are acquainted to. But separation is normal. It's something that always happens in nature. If we can see these things with an empty mind, with a mind that doesn't attach, we get to understand the processes of life. We get to understand dukkha. And we see that whenever we face the dukkha of separation, we can develop wisdom. Dukkha is just an experience. If we can see dukkha as merely as an experience of life, this will benefit our practice. We will be able to make use of dukkha. Sometimes the monks of a forest sangha, they explicitly try to face dukkha. They go to forest places that are wild and where there are many animals, which may be quite awe-inspiring and dangerous. So they actually retreat to these forests in order to find seclusion from the world, like the Sangha of Wat Vananachat in Ubon, in the mother monastery of the Western monks. They go to a place called Taodam on the Burmese border every hot season for 2 months, which is a wild jungle where there are still a lot of big animals, with like tigers and elephants. They go there to seek viveka, that means seclusion, physical seclusion, places where they don't have to face the difficulties and the chaos and all the agitation of life in society. And they hope to find that there's no trouble there. But in fact, all these animals, it's not the big animals that make them suffer, it's rather the small ones, very, very small ones. There's this kind of animal that goes around seeking for their blood. It's called a leech. It turns its head around until it finds something, and then it finally sucks the blood, and and finished having sucked the blood, it falls off and goes back to the forest, and leaving behind quite a big mess, because it's got this blood-thinning liquid in his substance, in his saliva, which makes the blood run out all the time. And for the leeches, this is very normal. They've done their job, they've eaten, and they fall back into the forest. But we just hate it, we fear it, and try to avoid it. So we experience dukkha when we come into a situation in the forest, like Daudam. In fact, we forget that the chemical substance that the leeches use is quite useful. There's some people in this world who rely on thinning their blood with certain substances. For example, like Luang Por was hinting at himself, right now he takes blood-thinning substances because of arteries in around his heart being clogged up. So he's quite thankful for these chemical substances, that they exist and they can save lives. So in the real, whether things are useful or not, you can see from many perspectives. Like sometimes you hate these things, sometimes you see their benefits. The real use we can make of situations that we face is in fact inside. We can't really judge whether it's externally things are useful or not. The real use is inside. There are real treasures lying in us, which we can't exchange with others when we find them. These are our experiences. The things that we experience ourselves, whether they are dukkha or sukha, if we experience, they become a real treasure for us. We reflect on our body, we reflect on the breath, and we watch the breath, and we try to let go of our mental activities while we do this. Whether they're sukha or dukkha, whether positive or negative, or whether things in our mind come up that are related to the past or the future. Thoughts about yesterday and tomorrow, we try to abandon, and we go to the breath, watching the breath, in order to be peaceful and establish our mind firmly in the present moment, the paccubana, the present time. This is the training we take up in order to cut off our attachments and cut off our mental proliferations. And we can find that if we practice externally, like going to a secluded place, this does still not bring us real freedom. We can go wherever we like, we won't really be free. We're still tied up and sticking to something, usually. So we need to practice to let these things go and stay in the present moment. The things that are obstacles to the processes of letting go, the Buddha called nivarana. These are the hindrances. Nivaranas, they are obstructions to peace of mind, obstructions to staying in the present moment, obstructions to letting go of the past and future. To overcome these hindrances takes a lot of time. We have to practice and be patient with ourselves. Just look at how the Sangha practice. They need a lot of patience. They've got very high standards for training. They need to follow all kinds of regulations. They've got all kinds of practices which they do together, whether people like them or not. Sometimes the Thai people fear like all these kind of practices the Sangha has to undergo. For example, how they try to sleep very little. These things that people call toraman. This is a word that's usually translated as torture. It's a bit too much maybe, but it's something that is imposing hardships on one deliberately in order to develop patience, endurance. So this is what the Sangha stands for many Thai people. They are torturing themselves. But this is not a bad thing, because you have to think of how we make use of iron, and how we develop, how we produce stainless steel, for example, through exposing it to the fire over and over, and then making it hot, beating it, and putting it into the form we like. This is a tough process. The Buddha said, like, to torture oneself is as necessary just as to take a rest. There has to be a balance in it. Nevertheless, we try to sleep very little. We try to rest very little in order to have much time to practice. The Sangha, or the practitioners, if they are young, they are granted about 4 hours sleep. And if they are a little elder, maybe 5 or 6. This depends, of course, on the phase of life one is in. But the aim is to go against the grain and to fight the hindrance of sleepiness, of dullness, where one isn't aware of what's going on. Sleepiness is an enemy that is hard to grasp because he has no form. You can't grab it. Many people in the Isan, they make the northeast of Thailand, when they are working outside on the fields, they have a nap during the day and they say it's because of the heat. Or other times they say it's because it's too cold. So this is there are reasons for taking a nap, relaxing, and we justify our fatigue. And we do have to admit that day and night do have physiological effects on the body. So it is a question of making these experiences and trying out how it is to go against the grain. Another big hindrance is the mood of our mind itself, the state our mind is in. Our mind can be in all kinds of modes. It can be in a positive mode or in a negative mode. It can be in a beneficial mode or in a disadvantageous mode. And the practitioner shouldn't object to these modes of mind just because he doesn't like them, but he needs to study them. These states of mind keep coming up, whether we like them or not. Our aim is to understand them. Hindrances in our practice come up both in forms that we like and forms that we don't like. In fact, the experiences that we like that turn out to be hindrances are the most difficult ones because they hinder the peace. We like them and we want to have more of them, and eventually they turn into disadvantages one day. If we follow our desires and we don't see the negative sides of them, we may be carried away, and in the end we don't see that they're actually hindering peace. So, in order to come across and to go beyond the mind states of good and bad, and that are advantages and disadvantages, we need to practice to cut off our worries about past and future and stay in the present moment. We need to develop the Paccuppanna Dhamma, which is free from worries about what we are going to do and what we haven't been doing yet, or what we have done. If we cut off our worries, we are doing our duty in developing a clear understanding of the present. We'll be developing brightness, and we'll have a reasonable attitude to the processes we are going through. In fact, the Buddha himself is called the one who is awake. Buddha means awakening. This is a state of mind which is far better than the dullness of sleep, where we are not aware of what is going on. So we need to practice the quality of a Buddha, of somebody who is awake, who is radiant, and who is in full spirits, trying to all the challenges of things that we fear and try to avoid. We try to see that in obstacles there are also benefits. Like if we experience dukkha, we can derive benefit. If we avoid dukkha, it is impossible to derive benefit from it. Of all the mental states that come up, there's the group called Mano Sanya Chetana. These are the mental intentions that are stored up in our memory. It's the mental food of memories. We think about our friends, our children, our father, mother, husband, wife. And in fact, all these are just illusions created by Mara. These are all tricks of Mara. Mara in the form of the Sankhara Mara. Sankhara are the mental proliferations, and the Sankhara Mara tricks us in building up illusions about how life with our friends, with our children, with father, mother, husband, and life would be like. So we sit there, rather than being in the present moment, we proliferate and go back to the past and to things that we have experienced before. This is called Manosanya Chetana, which arises in our mind, and we feed on it constantly. Just think of how the Buddha had the determination to cut off all his past, to give up and abandon, like what was dear to him. He was sitting and putting forth effort with full determination. He was striving, and it wasn't easy, and he was challenged by Mara. But yet he felt ashamed to give up his efforts. He made a strong resolution in his mind, which when we hear it makes our hair stand on end, saying, "Let only the flesh and blood dry up in my body, but I will not relax my energy until I have reached the Supreme." This is called Mano Panitana, a mental determination that the Buddha made. He tried to recollect his aim and pursue it with full determination. If we think about how the Buddha was able to do that, we must consider that the Buddha has built up the potential for being able to do this, which is called Bharami, in many, many lives, many, many ages, many, many, many practices. The Buddha compared it to somebody who is accomplished like this. Is compared to a thoroughbred horse, which is well trained and doesn't shy back when it's in battle. When it finally faces the battlefield, it doesn't shy back because it has built up all the strength and the mental resolution. There's no resignation for somebody who has built up potential like this. And eventually, this practice will bring the sankharas, the proliferations of the mind, to cease. We can also think about death as an object of our reflections. Then this makes clear that we actually don't understand our life and don't understand where we are coming from and where we are going from. In death there is nothing. It is void of the things that we are acquainted to. All the mental proliferations about past and future, they are useless if we think about death. And all the things that fuel our sankharas, fuel our mental proliferations, they become cut off if we think of the end of our life. It is like not supporting a fire with fuel anymore, not putting any more logs on a fire. Then the fire eventually goes out. So in our practice we need skillful means, and we need to find skillful means in taking experiences from our environment, the things that we face, the obstacles that we face, dukkha that we face, experiences that we face, in order to improve. Sometimes maybe we sit and we actually don't really want to improve. We just sit, and as soon as pain comes up, we change the posture. So Luang Por encourages us to develop skillful means in order to overcome the obstacles in our practice. The obstacles that we face in our practice, they are lessons. They are the lessons of life that life is teaching us. Life is in fact a fight with obstacles. And when we fight the obstacles and we face the obstacles, we are building up good immune systems. We are facing things that are hard to endure, and we get acquainted with them, and we get familiar with the obstacles. Then we get to know them, and we understand them, and then we derive benefits from them. The Sangha is a good example for that. For example, the practice of eating just once a day, which the Forest Sangha practices. This is something that is difficult to do, and it takes a lot of time to adapt to. Like in the first few weeks, somebody who practices newly, just eating once a day, will lose a lot of weight and maybe develop a lot of fear and anxiety around food, get really tied up with the subject of food. So it's something that you have to get used to, and you clearly see your attachment, you clearly see the difficulties of refraining from eating if you undertake certain lessons like this. And the aim of these practices is to study oneself and one's reactions. Even the Buddha did some fasting from time to time. He didn't fast until death, he just fasted in order to experience things and in order to build up khanti. Khanti is patient endurance, to build up a potential of being able to stand difficult situations. And in order to practice for the burning up of kilesas, which is a famous quote from the Buddha saying that khanti is the supreme means to burn up kilesas, the defilements of the mind. In fact, one can observe that if one has boosted one's immune system, in fact, one can see if one has boosted one's immune system, in the end, practices like these feel normal. First, our weight may drop if we eat once a meal, but then it feels normal, and then we get thicker and fatter again. The normality that we experience with facing obstacles is in fact what the Buddha called the sabhava dhamma, the state of Dhamma, the normality of Dhamma. Sometimes other people might think that we are a bunch of depressed people here doing these practices, and it may seem depressing for people to think that we are restricting ourselves in our freedom, but this is the viewpoint of somebody who just follows his desires. But in fact, if you see like the monks and the people at the time of the Buddha, they were radiant and they were in good spirits, they were bright. The world thinks differently. If you ask somebody about the reality of life, for example, asking somebody, "How old are you?" he might feel insulted immediately because he doesn't want to reveal his age. And this is some of the things that people in the world get depressed about if you ask them about their age. But in fact, aging is normal. And to ask somebody, "How old are you?" the Buddha would praise as good practice to warn us not to be heedless. So in fact, these are things that are not depressing, but they help to get us into good spirits. Another example, what people think about, like the practices where we try to enhance the feeling of normality in our life, and they misunderstand our practices, is the practice of reflecting on the loathsomeness of the body. Like the Buddha clearly said, like we should reflect on the body as something impure, something disgusting, something that is filthy, that is liable to become a corpse, and that has got all kinds of impurities in it. So people see us practicing like this and they think, this is depressing. But actually, reflecting on the reality of the body like this brings up a feeling of peace. And it helps the one who practices like that to understand the reality of the body. Normally, people see the body as something praiseworthy and good, but then eventually it fails to function. And it is not the way we want it. We have to kind of permanently dress and beautify it so it becomes the way we want it. But nature takes it into a different direction. So we realistically look at the body as something not good. And we gain the feeling of being independent and separated from it. We don't attach to it and we are not identifying with it. And it makes peace come up in us because we don't have to identify with the illusions that we try to uphold because of our desires. And in fact, this is very important because desires are always insatiable. You can never get them fully satisfied. So we practice what the Buddha called kayagata sati. That means mindfulness of the body, seeing the body in its reality, for the sake of peace, for the sake of understanding, and for the sake of detachment. If we have experienced the detachment towards the body, all kinds of impingements on us, like the worldly dhammas that come towards us, they won't have much power over us. We are separated from identification with the body. Like all the things that we want to gain, the fame and praise, they don't have meaning because we see ourselves realistically. The loka dhamma, praise and blame, gain and loss, fame and disrepute, sukha and dukkha, they are worth nothing for us. And we see those people, for example, that come and criticize us as just like people that are out of their minds and that are sick because they don't see the reality. The body is usually object to criticism. They say something about our body, feel kind of insulted. But somebody who has practiced detachment of the body will see this just as an element of delusion in the other person. Because we know that our body just exists out of elements, like it is made out of the 4 great elements, earth, wind, water, fire, and maybe you can add zinc and potassium and magnesium and all kinds of other elements that we know. So it's just made out of chemical elements. And we know that this is the truth. And we know that these things are not permanent. They're just temporarily compound phenomena. And those who criticize us don't see it. In fact, they are in a pitiable state. So their criticism, in fact, arouses metta, a feeling of compassion in us. You can compare it to people going to a forest and start criticizing the trees. They say, these trees, they are not straight. These trees, they're too small, they're too big, they're crooked. Well, we would say a person who goes to a forest like that is a crazy person. So they can criticize the trees, but we know that trees are normally like that. So this person must be crazy. So we become immune towards criticism. And like if somebody throws something at us, it is just like food that we don't want to eat anyway. And we experience that we are peaceful when we live in the world. The eye still gets eye contact, the ears still hear things, and the sense spheres still pick up impingements. But our mind is like a clear mind that is like clear water. It is not dirty, it is not sullied, it is clear and bright. And clear water is not dangerous. It is easy to see through, and one can consume it without any poisons. So, when we have a body, when we experience life in a body, we need to develop detachment and seclusion of the body. Similar, since having born we have a mind, we need to take our practice to seclusion and detachment of this mind. So now Luang Por has given you a map and guidelines for the direction of your practice, and Luang Por closes off saying he is very pleased to see your interest in the Buddha Dhamma and would like to support your studies and the fact that you take the chance to develop yourself in the practice and to develop the Buddha Dhamma, which is in fact very hard to find in these days.